G'day. Today we're talking Evakool fridge freezers. Now in Australia, most people, if you talk fridge freezers in four-wheel driving or camp, going away caravanning or anything like that, most people will jump to Engel as a brand if they're going to talk to you about it. If they've got one, they've probably got most people who've got a fridge freezer who want to talk to you about the joys of owning a fridge freezer in camping, and one that they've had for years, it'll probably be a 40-litre Engel. The new ones are a little bit different. They're all digital now. They have been for some time, as opposed to really, really old ones that just ran on a dial. Evakools are the same, but we'll get to that. They've got a really good reputation, and with good reason. They're a quality unit. And the other one that people will frequently recognise in brand will be Waco. And Waco's, it depends who you talk to about whether they like them or they don't. But most people will rate an Engel. They might choose a different brand, but most people would generally concede that the Engel's a pretty good thing. I run an Evakool. I've run an Evakool for years. This would be probably over 10 years old now. It's been used well, really well used. It's had a couple of stints as my primary fridge when we've moved house or something, or a couple of times we've had power outages, 10-year power outages, and we've had to rely on this. We also do some processing of stuff, and I've used this as a standalone freezer for extended period of time, like probably 4 to 6 weeks, permanently running as a freezer. It's traveled with us in the car in the old Ram. Sat on the back of the ute in the Hilux in the middle of summer, and it's traveled with us in the Land Cruiser as well. And I really, really like the Evakool. There's some things that people don't like about them. There's some things that people do. We'll try and cover all of them in this video. So the reason I like it is that Evakool, as I understand it, the first thing they made was Eskies. And this is an Evakool Esky. That's what this is. It's an Evakool Esky with a compressor on the side of it. Now, Evakool will tell you that the design that they've come to, this is their original design. They do make more conventionals now, because enough people in the market when I'd buy a fridge from Evakool, but I don't like this big compressor sitting off to the side. I want something in a cube shape. So they've done that now to compete with Engel. That's been around for quite a while as well. They make various ranges of Evakool. They make, this is equivalent, the proper Evakools, Evakool branded with not something else, FridgeMate or other branding on it, which are their cheaper lines, but the proper Evakool brands are equivalent to their top of the line fridges, and they make them in this configuration, and they make them in the more conventional styling as well. For me, I like this design. I think it makes a lot of sense. You've got an Esky, effectively an Evakool Esky, and Evakool Eskies are really good. My first introduction to Evakool was with their Eskies. We had a very large Evakool Esky. That's 20 years ago, 15 years ago, something like that. Nearly 20 years ago, actually. Long time ago, because I'm old, apparently. That Esky lived for me when my fridge blew up. We had that for about, 3-4 months. And that Evakool Esky, it was quite a big Esky, it was bigger than this, but that Evakool Esky was my fridge. And I ran that as my only refrigerator. I put a bag of ice in it, and I changed the ice bag a little bit more frequently than once a week. It didn't quite get me a week, but almost. And it put milk in it, and then some fridge stuff. Wouldn't operate as a freezer, obviously, because it had no power. But that thing really, really held the cool in very well. Like, I only had to change that bag of ice over, didn't quite get a week. But fantastic. Really sold me on the quality of the build of an Evakool Esky. So when I found out about this really appealed. I was originally going to take the default choice and go with an Engel, but ended up going to one of these. So Esky and then compressor on the side. Now, Evakool's reasoning for that is because they say, well, if you put the compressor underneath, you're going to have some heat transfer from that compressor sitting underneath your ice box, you're going to get some, because heat rises, hot air rises, you're going to get some heat transfer into the body of the fridge freezer itself. And then the compressor is effectively going to have to work against itself to a degree. Now, some people, depending on who you speak to, will say that's more or less of a problem. And you do have venting on the side. You'll have venting on the side of it where the compressor is to try and get the hot air out that way. But just mechanics, you are going to get, or engineering I should say, you are going to get heat transfer into the body of the esky. How much of a problem it is, I'll leave that for you to decide, but that's why Evakool have this design. It's off to the side, and know if the heat rises, it doesn't go into the esky. Other advantage of the Evakool straight off the bat is it's an esky. That's what you're starting with, which means if you go and buy, and a lot of people do this, they'll compare one of these, because I'm a big advocate of the Evakool, I thoroughly recommend it. Recommend the Evakool, and they'll go, oh, about the same price as Engel, I'll get an Engel. But the problem with the Engel is as soon as you buy the Engel, they'll sell you the Engel for whatever a 400 litre Engel is. I was going to say $1,500, but that's last time I priced it. They're probably way more expensive than that now. It's been a while. As soon as you buy your Engel, they'll sell you the bag, because if you're going to put it on the back of your ute, you're going to need the bag. Because you can't have the heat beating down on it, it's going to lose efficiency, so they'll put a canvas bag, basically jackets the Engel, and they'll sell you that to go over your Engel, and that's an additional price, and it's not cheap. It's not a $10 extra, it's not cheap. And that adds to the cost of the fridge, whereas this can sit on the back of the ute just as it is. It's white, so it's going to reflect heat, but you can see the thickness of the top, and that's fridge panel. You know, it's sandwich panel, so it's going to keep your the insides insulated far better than what a standard Engel is. So you're starting off with something that's ready to go on the back of the ute or on the campsite. Don't need a bag, and with an Engel you've got to unzip it, and then you can lift your lid. Whereas this, you've got two latches. You just pop your latch. There you go. You have to unzip it and then grab the handle and lift it. So, you know, whether that's an inconvenience for you, probably, you know, Engel people will tell me, oh no, Engel's, yeah, this is another one of these items where people are really, really passionate. Engel people will only own Engel. I don't own an Engel. I got no problems with Engels. Engels are good. They have that good, there's a Seacom compressor, really good quality item. I've got no complaints about Engels. I just like my Evakool. My Evakool's served me fine. It's got two handles on the side, which Evakool say that you can use to tie the thing down. And when I've had this on the back of the ute, that is exactly what I've used to tie it down. I've just used the handle and the handle here and just tied it down like with a ratchet strap. It's got a drain plug up here, which you can't see. It's out of the shop, but it's at the bottom, just there on the side. So you can drain it. It comes with some dividers from new. You'll get the, that's your fridge divider. So you can run the whole thing as a fridge. You can run it as a fridge slash freezer. So the freezer's this side, fridge is this side. You have top of the fridge that goes in there like that. So you can run it as a full fridge, full freezer, or freezer and fridge. It's up to you. Recommendations on how to use it on the sticker under the hood. Nice and simple. You can buy all the parts from Evakool. You can buy new seals. If you bust these are pop riveted on. If these snap, you can just drill out your rivets, buy new ones from Evakool. You can buy new handles, you can buy a new bung. All the parts serviceable. Good quality compressor in it, like the Engel. Evakool haven't skimped on the compressor. The compressor's a good unit. So I wouldn't pick an Engel over an Evakool because of the quality of the compressor. They're both quite fine. You'll get an Anderson plug connection that goes on it, and it'll terminate. You can buy a AC adapter, which will give you a cigarette lighter at one end, and then you convert it to go into your power point, your 240 volt. You can buy that. That doesn't come with it. What you'll get with it is you'll get your cord that terminates in a cigarette lighter plug, and you'll get a cord that terminates in an Anderson plug. So that's what you'll get, and then that is extra. That's not an official Evakool item. I just bought that online for 15 bucks or something. It wasn't very much. And yeah, it's been absolutely fine. Has worked faultlessly. Your digital readout, the digital readout, this is pretty old now, but the digital readout is exactly the same. So you've got up and down, high speed, medium, low speed for your compressor, and then your power on and off. If I'm running it in the car, I'll run it at low speed because it can trip out. If I'm trying to run it at high speed on a hot day, when I plug it into the wall, it can run high speed. It's not a problem. It's got plenty of juice to do that. So, you know, it's good. I find it works really well. Complaints about it, as a freezer only, if you fill it full, and I've done this on many occasions, I have filled it chock a block full with stuff that I want to freeze, and it's going to take a while to do it. It'll work its arse off. You set it at -20 and it'll work its arse off, and it's going to take a very long time to freeze something. If you filled it, you know, with masses of ice cream, for example, it's going to, in a hot day, it's summer in Australia now, it's going to struggle to keep that frozen. As a fridge freezer, not a problem. Nothing I've had put in it as a fridge freezer has melted. But if you fill it absolutely chock-a-block full of stuff that you want to freeze, it's gonna struggle. Having said that, if you put stuff in it, we were moving house, we had to put all our stuff in it from the freezer. If it's already frozen, you got rock hard frozen meat, and you got to put this as a full freezer while you're transitioning or overnight, I found that to be fine. But it's just if it's got to freeze something and it's absolutely full and you're running the whole thing as freezer, I've found it struggles a little bit to do that. So, or it takes longer than what I would think is ideal. But anyway, keep that in mind. But as a fridge, no problem. I've had this running on the back of the ute in 40-degree heat, and it's operated as a fridge to keep my lunch cold. Absolutely no problems at all. It's awkward to lift. You know, this is a 40 litre. A 40 litre Engel is going to be a little bit easy to lift because it's not as wide. This is, you know, I'm not at full, you know, stretch to grab it. Is it heavy? You know, like it's all right. It's not light. It's very unevenly weighted because this end is all esky. This end weighs nothing, and all your weight's at this end. So it's unevenly weighted. When there's stuff in there, it's less of a problem. But if you're lifting it dry, you know, is it going to bust your back? In my opinion, no. It's not. You know, it does have weight, but it's fine. You can lift it around anywhere you want to. But it is very, you know, unevenly weighted when it's empty. But then again, you know, you buy a big Engel with the compressors up one end, it's not dissimilar to that. Some people don't like the size of them, so if you're going to put it in a vehicle, in a Land Cruiser or a Prado or Mitsubishi, you know, Pajero Sport or something, they might not like that extra length. They'd rather have it taller and stumpier. I get that. So they want a more traditional design. So that's where your Engels, Wacos, or your more traditional manufactured Evakools come in. So some people don't like that it's got that extra chunk on the side. So if this wasn't here and you wanted a 40 litre that was something like this, what it's going to end up is it's going to be taller or it's going to be wider because you've got to put that extra volume somewhere if you're going to bury this compressor in underneath it. It's got to be wider, it's got to be longer, it's got to be taller to compensate for that. But if I meet someone say, get an Evakool, and their complaint is, if they're going to make a complaint, generally they say, I don't like this off to the side. It adds an extra bit of dimension there that I don't like. Fair enough, but that's Evakool's design. So this has been running for a long time. I've seen lots of Evakool fridges, fridge freezers on the old design. It was kind of like the old Engels, the design before this, where it didn't have a digital panel, it just had a dial. In fact, I missed one. I was going to buy one, and it was exactly the same as this, but it was the old style. I think it's probably 20 years old. It was a bit yellowed. They said it works faultlessly. All the accessories are there, but it was the old dial version, and he only wanted $250 for it. That's a bargain considering the quality of the unit, and had a little bit of yellowing, I think, or it might have just been a bad photo, but otherwise looked immaculate. All the bits were there, and that's the real thing about Evakools for me. If you're going to buy them new, I think Engels are really worthy of consideration because they really hold their value well. If you're going to sell it, you know, if you're going to buy a fridge freezer, you're not sure if you're going to stick with it, fair enough. Maybe you'd buy an Engel because it is going to be the easiest one to flip. if you decide for some reason you want a bigger one, you want a smaller one, or you don't want a freezer at all. That's the big advantage of Engel, in my opinion. It's very saleable as a used item. Evakool's not so much. In fact, one of the reasons that really coaxed me into it, I was pretty set on getting an Evakool, and the reason I bought this was a fellow had it. He bought a caravan, a big caravan, and this came in the caravan, and he already had this model fridge freezer, so he didn't need a second one. So I bought this from him. It had not been used, and I got it for $550. So that was well under half price, and it was brand spanking new. And Evakools, I find, come up for sale, good quality compressor, good quality body, and you can buy them for well under the price of a used Engel. So that's the advantage for me. If I was buying new, what would I buy? If I had to buy new, I would still buy an Evakool because I like the design for all the aforementioned reasons. I like that I can have it on the back of the ute, and I know them. I've had this one, it's operated faultlessly, and if I had a genuine need for another fridge freezer, and I knew I was going to keep it effectively forever, I'd buy another Evakool new. If you get on their website, on the Evakool website, from time to time they'll have factory seconds, which give you a really good discount on new price, and you can buy direct from Evakool and get a really good deal, so that's worth checking out. But otherwise, I would probably buy it just because I really like the fridges. But if I was buying one, it was my very, very first fridge freezer, and I didn't know if 40 litres was going to suit me, or whether I wanted a 50 litre, 30 litre, or whatever. Didn't know what size I really wanted. What I would do is I would buy a 40 litre Engel with a bag. If you had to buy new, I'd buy a 40 litre Engel with a bag, and that way, if I went, it's too small, I know I can sell it. 40 litre Engels sell for good money, and I'll maximise my resale. If I wanted to go down, same principle, of course. Whereas the Evakool, you know you're going to take a hit. Whereas if you said, I know I want 40 litres, the Evakool dimensions are fine. I absolutely know I'm not going to resell this thing. I know I'm not going to have to trade out for something bigger or smaller. Then, yeah, that's what I would buy an Evakool. If I was going to buy one, I knew I was going to keep it forever. This is what I'd buy again. I really, really like it. It's given me no trouble. But having said that, I know enough people around with Engels who have had them for years, if not decades, and they're still absolutely, completely reliable, and they've run, you know, I know tradies have an Engel on the back of their ute permanently, and it's running every single day of the week, and it's still running, you know, a decade more into its use, into its life. So, you know, this is a good unit. Engels are a good unit. They have a good reputation for a reason. But for what it's worth, that's my review of an Evakool fridge. Would I buy it again? That's generally my where I like to conclude on these things. Well, I've already given you the answer to that. The answer is yes, I absolutely would. For what I paid for this thing, I absolutely would buy it. If I could find another two at the price I paid this for, I'd grab them. Because I can always, I probably wouldn't buy two, but I could do with another one. But they're really, really good. And the other advantage you have with this thing is that if you just want an esky, if you're out camping or you're just at the back of the house, well, you wouldn't do it at the back of the house, you'd plug it in. But if you were just somewhere where you went, you know what, I don't really want to run it, you can chuck ice in this and you can use it as an esky. I mean, reality is you're probably never going to do that. But you could do that if you wanted to. But they're a good unit. They're reasonably efficient. Are they the most efficient thing in the world? I don't know. I've got nothing to compare it to. But they're reasonably efficient. I did see testing on these things years ago, and the Evakool was very efficient, but it wasn't the most efficient thing. I can't remember what it was, but they're good quality units. They're Australian made, which is a big plus for me. They're made here. Well, they used to be. This is an Australian-made model. It's an Australian company, hence the kangaroo on the top of it. So I'm happy to support an Australian company. Should have put that in earlier. Shouldn't have left that to the end. But really happy with my Evakool. And if you get one, if you know the drawbacks as outlined, you know, some people don't like the plastic handles to tie it down with. I've had no problem with it, but obviously they're plastic. You wouldn't want to overstress them. But this thing's gone all over the place with me and never had a problem. You know, that just check your dimensions. That's the big one you want to check. Check your dimensions. Make sure it's going to fit somewhere where you want it to. If you really want all different bits and pieces of accessories, jump on the Evakool website and see what they've got. Make sure they've got what you want and what will cover you. But I think they're a good option. I hope this was useful for you. Thanks for watching.